From Prophecies and Revelations by Saint Bridget of Sweden. Our Lady's words to Saint Bridget, using a marvelous comparison to describe a certain bishop, likening the bishop to a butterfly, his humility and pride to its two wings, the three facades covering up the vices of the bishop to the insect's three colors, his deeds to the thickness of its coloring, his double will to the butterfly's two feelers, his greed to its mouth, his puny love to its puny body. Chapter 14. Our Lady speaks to Saint Bridget of her son, saying, "You are a vessel that the owner fills and the teacher empties. However, it is one and the same person who fills and empties you. A person who can pour wine and milk and water together into a vessel would be called an expert teacher if he could separate each of these liquids blended together and restore each to its own proper nature. This is what I, the mother and teacher of all mankind, have done and am doing to you. A year and a half ago, all sorts of matters were spoken to you, and now they all seem to be blended together in your soul, and it would seem disgusting if they were all poured out together, since their purpose would not be understood. This is why I gradually distinguish them as I see fit. Do you recall that I sent you to a certain bishop, whom I called my servant? Let us compare him to a butterfly with two wide wings spattered in the colors white, red, and blue. When you touch it, the pigment sticks to your fingers like ashes. This insect has a puny body, but a big mouth, two feelers on its forehead, and a hidden place in its belly, through which it emits the filth of its belly. The wings of this insect, that is, the bishop's wings, are his humility and pride. Outwardly he appears humble in his words and gestures, humble in his dress and actions, but inwardly there is a pride that makes him great in his own sight, rendering him swollen up with his own reputation, ambitious for people's appreciation, judgmental of others, and arrogant in preferring himself to others. On these two wings he flies before people with the apparent humility that aims at pleasing individuals and being the talk of everyone, as well as with the pride that makes him consider himself to be holier than others. The three colors of the wings represent his three facades that cover up his vices. The color red means that he continually lectures on the sufferings of Christ and the miracles of the saints in order to be called holy, but they are far from his heart indeed, since he has not much liking for them. The color blue means that on the outside he does not seem to care about temporal goods, seeming to be dead to the world, and to be all for the things of heaven under his facade of heavenly blue. But this second color makes him no more stable or fruitful before God than the first. The color white implies that he is a religious in his dress and commendable in his ways. However, his third color holds just as much charm and perfection as the first two. As a butterfly's pigment is thick and stays on your fingers, leaving behind nothing but a kind of ashy substance, so too his deeds seem to be admirable, inasmuch as he desires solitude, but they are empty and ineffectual as to their usefulness to him, since he does not sincerely yearn for or love that which is lovable. The two feelers represent his duplicitous will. You see, he wants to lead a life of comfort in this world, and to have eternal life after death. He does not want to be cheated out of being held in great esteem on earth, while receiving an even more perfect crown in heaven. This bishop is just like a butterfly, thinking he can carry heaven on one feeler and earth on the other, although he cannot put up with the least little difficulty for God's glory. So he relies on God's church and thinks he can benefit it by his word and example, as if the church could not thrive without him. He presumes that his own good deeds will make worldly people bear spiritual fruit. Hence he reasons like a soldier who has already fought the fight. Since, he says, I am already called devout and humble. Why should I strive after a life of greater austerity? Although I may sin in a few pleasures without which my life would be unhappy, still my greater merits and good deeds will be my excuse. If heaven can be won for a cup of cold water, what need is there to struggle beyond measure? A butterfly has a big mouth as well, but its greed is even bigger, so much so that if it could eat up every single fly but one, it would want to eat that one up too. Likewise, if this man could add a shilling to the many he already has in such a way that it would go unnoticed in secret, he would take it, although the hunger of his greed would not be stilled even then. A butterfly also has a hidden outlet for its impurities. This man, too, gives improper vent to his anger and impatience, displaying his secret impurities to others. And as a butterfly has a little body, this man has little charity, while his lack of charity is made up for only by the width and breadth of his wings. The bride answered, "If he has just one spark of charity, there is always some hope of life and charity and salvation for him." Our Lady answers back, "Did not Judas also have some charity left when he said after he had betrayed his Lord, 'I have sinned in betraying innocent blood'? He wanted to make it look as though he had charity, but he had none." Our Lady's words to Saint Bridget, in which another such bishop is allegorically described as a gadfly. His wordy eloquence as flying, his two concerns as two wings, his flattery of the world as a sting, and about the Virgin's amazement at the life of these two bishops, also about preachers. Chapter 15. The Mother of God speaks again to Saint Bridget, saying, "I have shown you another bishop, whom I called the pastor of the flock. Let us compare him to a gadfly with an earthy color that flies about noisily. Wherever he alights, his bite is terrible and painful. This pastor has an earthy color, for, although he was called to poverty, he would rather be rich than poor. He would rather be in charge than submit. He would rather have his own will than be disciplined through obedience to others. He flies about noisily in the sense that he is full of wordy eloquence in his pious preaching, and lectures about worldly vanities instead of spiritual doctrine, praising and following worldly vanities rather than the holy simplicity of his order. He has two wings as well, that is, two ideas. The first is that he wants to offer people charming and soothing speech, so that he may win their esteem. The second is that he wants everyone to yield to him and obey him. The sting of a gadfly is unbearable. Likewise, this man stings souls to damnation. Although he should be a doctor of souls, he does not tell the people who come to him about their danger and infirmity, nor does he use a sharp scalpel, but speaks soothingly to them in order to be called meek, and so as not to cause anyone to avoid him. These two bishops are quite simply astonishing. One of them makes an appearance of being poor, solitary, and humble, in order to be called spiritual. The other one wants to possess the world in order to be called merciful and generous. The one wants to seem to own nothing, and yet longs to possess everything secretly. The other openly wants to have many possessions, in order to have a lot to give away, and thus win the esteem of others. Accordingly, as the proverb goes, since they serve me in a way I cannot see, because I do not accept it, I shall reward them in a way they will not see. Do you wonder why such men are praised for their preaching? I will tell you. Sometimes a bad man speaks to good people, and the good Spirit of God is poured into them, not because of the goodness of the teacher, but through the teacher's words in which the good Spirit of God is found for the good of the listeners. Sometimes a good man speaks to bad people who are made good by hearing it both because of the good Spirit of God and the goodness of the teacher. Sometimes a cold man speaks to cold people in such a way that these cold hearers recount what they have heard to fervent people who had not been there, rendering their listeners more fervent. So, do not worry about what kind of people you are sent to. Wonderful is God, who tramples gold underfoot and places mud amidst the rays of the sun. Christ explains to Saint Bridget that the damnation of souls does not please God. Also, about the astonishing questions of the younger bishop to the older bishop, and about the answers of the older bishop to the younger one. Chapter 16. Jesus Christ speaks to the bride, saying, "Why do you think these two men are being shown to you? Is it because God enjoys censuring and condemning them? Of course not. No, it is done in order better to reveal God's patience and glory, and also so that those who hear it may fear God's judgment. But now, come and listen to an astonishing conversation. Look there, the younger bishop has asked the older one question, saying, 'Brother, hear and answer me. Once you had been bound to the yoke of obedience, why did you forsake it? Once you had chosen poverty in the religious state, why did you abandon them? Once you had entered the religious state and made yourself dead to the world, why did you seek the episcopate?' The older man answered, 'The obedience that taught me to be an inferior was a burden to me. That is why I preferred my freedom. The yoke that God says is pleasant was bitter to me. That is why I sought and chose bodily comfort. My humility was pretended. That is why I craved honors. And since it is better to push than to pull, I desired the episcopate accordingly.' The younger man asked again, 'Why did you not do honor to your episcopal see by giving it worldly honor? Why did you not acquire riches by means of worldly wisdom? Why did you not spend your possessions according to the demands of worldly honor? Why did you humble yourself outwardly rather than acting in accord with worldly ambition?' The older man answered, 'The reason I did not strew worldly honors upon my see was that I was hoping myself to be honored so much the more by appealing to the humble and spiritual rather than worldly minded. Therefore, in order to be praised by worldly people, I made a show of holding everything in contempt. I appeared humble and devout in order to be held in esteem by spiritual men. The reason I did not acquire riches through worldly wisdom was in order that spiritual men might not notice it, and hold me in contempt because of my secularity. The reason I was not liberal in giving gifts was that I preferred to have few rather than many companions for the sake of my own peace and quiet. I preferred having my money chest full to handing away gifts.' Again the younger man asked, 'Tell me, why did you give a pleasant and sweet drink out of a dirty vessel to an ass? Why did you give the bishop husks from the pigsty? Why did you fling down your crown under your feet? Why did you spit out wheat, but chew weeds? Why did you free others from their chains, but bind yourself with fetters? Why did you apply medicine to the wounds of others, but poison to your own?' The older man answered, 'I gave my ass a sweet drink from a disgusting, dirty vessel in the sense that, although a scholar, I preferred to handle the divine sacraments of the altar for the sake of my worldly reputation rather than to apply myself to everyday cares. Inasmuch as my secrets were unknown to men, but known to God, I grew a great deal in presumption, and in that way added to the heavy justice of my terrible condemnation.' To the second question, I answer that I gave the bishop husks from the pigsty in the sense that I followed the promptings of nature through self-indulgence, and did not stand firm in self-restraint. As to the third question, I cast my episcopal crown underfoot in the sense that I preferred to do acts of mercy for the sake of human favor, rather than acts of justice for the glory and love of God. As to the fourth question, I spat out wheat but chewed straw, in the sense that I did not preach God's word out of love for God, nor did I like doing the things I told others to do. As to the fifth question, I freed others but bound myself, in the sense that I absolved the people who turned to me with contrition, but I myself liked doing the things that they lamented through their penance and rejected through their tears. As to the sixth question, I anointed others with healing ointment, but myself with poison, in the sense that while I preached about purity of life and made others better, I made myself worse. I laid down precepts for others, but was myself unwilling to lift a finger to do those very things. Where I saw others making progress, that is where I failed and wasted away, since I preferred to add a load to my already committed sins than to lessen my load of sins by making reparation. After this a voice was heard saying, "Give thanks to God that you are not among these poisonous vessels that, when they break, return to the poison itself." Immediately the death of one of the two was then announced. Welcome to the Virgo Potens YouTube channel. If you enjoy this video, give it a like. I also invite you to subscribe to this channel so that you won't miss new content. Please prayerfully consider supporting my work by becoming a patron of Virgo Potens on Patreon and/or by buying one of my books. My ebooks are available on Amazon as well as on the Apple Bookstore. For those who prefer a physical copy rather than an ebook, my book, Spiritual Warfare, Know Thy Enemy, is also available as a paperback on Amazon. If you are interested in making a one-time contribution, I suggest that you do so by simply buying one of my books. I am thankful for your support. Links to Patreon and to my books will be posted in the comments section of this video. The continuation of this work isn't possible without you. Lastly, and most importantly, please pray for me. May the Virgin Most Powerful guide and protect you.